Hello, I'm Adam Trambley. I'm a teacher for Homiletics at the Stevenson School for Ministry. And these are my considerations and tips for preaching Ash Wednesday, Holy Week, Easter, Christmas, Lent, and Advent. Let's start with Ash Wednesday. On Ash Wednesday, you tend to get a wide cross-section of people at the services, mostly the more devout parishioners you have, but also some duty parishioners who come to things like Christmas, Easter, Ash Wednesday, Palm Sunday, as well as people from other denominations who might find your service time the most convenient for them and their work schedule. The liturgy on Ash Wednesday in the Episcopal Church is fairly long, and congregations that have a normal liturgical sense might start to lose their attention span by the end. So it's worth keeping things tighter. A practical sermon for Ash Wednesday is usually helpful. People come for tangible ashes and something straightforward on prayer, fasting, almsgiving, or another Lenten devotion is going to be helpful. Usually, I'd suggest keeping two things in mind as you prepare an Ash Wednesday service. The first is, how is repentance in fact good news? Because any preaching needs to be about the good news of Jesus and the way that this is good news for people. And so you want to be able to describe how Lenten devotions, how the Ash Wednesday experience is actually good news. The other question that's worth keeping in mind as you prepare a sermon and prepare for the service is, why do we put ashes on our heads when in the gospel reading Jesus is going to tell us not to? This isn't something that probably you will put and include in your sermon as an explanation, but it's something that people might ask you, and it's something to have resolved in your own mind as you lead the service with integrity and authenticity. From Ash Wednesday, I want to talk a bit about Palm Sunday or Passion Sunday. This service is probably your third highest attendance of the year. A lot of people will come to get their palms. It's also a very long liturgy with lots of contradictions and paradoxes in it. You have a palm procession gospel, long Old Testament and Psalm readings, New Testament reading, a passion reading, usually a dramatized passion reading in some way. And the advice for Palm Sunday is to pick one specific thing to preach on. Make it tight and focused, and then sit down. There's too much happening in the day to hit everything. And there's no need to be the cruise director. The liturgy will do its work here. Instead, the best focus is to give everybody something of added value. Amid all the things that are happening in the service, pick one thing that you have been called to talk about, or you feel like you want to talk about, that people can take home. Maybe it's one piece of the Passion reading. Maybe it's something about the Palm liturgy itself, or some other aspect of the day. Whatever it is, it's okay, but just focus on that and be pretty concise. There's no need to be all things to all people here, because people are going to be able to get out of the liturgy the thing that they need. So you're just giving them something else that they can choose from. It's also worth noting that for some people, this is going to be the extent of their Holy Week. But for other people and for the church, this is just the beginning of many Holy Week services. So you don't have to preach like it is all of Holy Week and fit everything into one day, even if for some people that's what they'll take away or that's what will be for them. Just offer what you have to bring along with the liturgy itself and sit down and be grateful for that. When we get to the rest of the Holy Week liturgies, Maundy, Thursday, Good Friday, if you have a Tenebrae service, maybe a Holy Saturday service, you're most likely to get very devout and pious members of your congregation. Additionally, the liturgies themselves have differences from standard Sunday liturgies, and they tend to be interesting. They're intense readings, they're intense experiences like foot washing or veneration of the cross that are tangible and meaningful and can evoke all kinds of feelings and devotions in people. So these liturgies are the ones where it's really a good idea to go deep. You have a congregation that knows the basics. So this is a safe place to talk about something challenging or something troubling or something that doesn't resolve itself cleanly. Most of Holy Week doesn't in fact resolve itself cleanly. We have to wait till Easter to get a resolution, and even there, that resolution is bigger than us. During Holy Week, these services are places where we can talk about the sorrow and the horrors of the Passion and how it hits us. We don't want to look for the resolution on Easter yet. We want to focus on what is the good news of Good Friday, or what is the good news of Maundy, Thursday. The good news of Easter is incredibly joyful, but that's for a different day that hasn't come yet. Also, it's worth noting that the Holy Saturday liturgy in the morning has its own integrity and emotional emphasis, and it doesn't need to be explained away. If you're lucky enough to be in a church that actually has a morning prayer on Holy Saturday morning, you get to really live into the incompleteness of the moment and to preach on that. And in fact, we may not have had a time when it's so important to really wrestle with the incompleteness of the moment. Certainly, there's much more to mine in that experience for people and help people with than maybe there was 5 years ago. From there, we move on to the Easter Vigil. The Easter Vigil is like Palm Sunday in that there is a whole lot happening, but it's much more coherent and focused. You also are likely to have congregations that have been with you through Holy Week. Some of the most dedicated members, people who are generally already celebrated Maundy, Thursday, and Good Friday, and have gone through that whole emotional ride of Holy Week. And so that gives you different options and things you can do for the sermon. One option is to basically yell, "Alleluia, Christ is risen," and just walk through what's happened that day with as much energy and joy and excitement as you can. Then in a way that almost you can be the tour guide. You can draw the lines and explain what's happened and why and what that's meaning to you. And it's worth noting that this can be especially effective if you're already preaching multiple times during Holy Week. We all only have so much time and energy. And if you're already preparing multiple sermons, the Easter Vigil is in fact a service that has so much going on for itself that people are going to get, that if you just point out what's happening, that's probably enough. I would never say don't prepare for a sermon, but if there's just an outline of Easter joy for this, that's probably better than skipping or skimping on one of the sermons at one of the other times during Holy Week. You can also preach a sermon as if you're writing the Exultet for 2025 or whatever year it is by the time you watch this. To say this is the night when this happens, and this is happening, and this is happening, and God is doing this. And that in and of itself can make an amazing sermon. You can draw the through lines from Palm Sunday to Good Friday to Easter. You can also lean into the confusion of the apostles at the resurrection, because the people that are there this night are going to get and understand the confusion and the joy and the awe of Easter and want to experience that. They'll recognize that standing at the empty tomb is confounding in a way that doesn't quite cohere with necessarily Easter bunnies and chocolate. And you can lean into that confusion and difficulty even as it goes with the joy of Easter. The other thing I'll just say is that this liturgy is long, but it's supposed to be long. And people who show up know it's going to be long. And so you can, if you want, preach longer, if it's good, and hold people's attention. And people will be excited to experience that in a way that a really long Palm Sunday liturgy at the same time they usually experience it Sunday morning doesn't quite get. Um, or a Good Friday evening service, or a Monday, Thursday service that starts late when people may have to get up the next day or whatever is a little different. But if people are coming to Easter Vigil, they're going to want to stay with you. And if you take them deeper, they're going to appreciate that. Easter Sunday morning, I think, is a little more difficult, however, because you have a variety of people there. You have your faithful congregants. You also have family members, guests, visitors, people who may not have been in church much at all since Christmas or last Easter. You might have kids that have been forced to dress up in uncomfortable clothing after having been given way too much chocolate. You, as the preacher, may be hyped up on way too much chocolate as well. And so that creates a different set of expectations. Also, people coming with secular Easter understandings are thinking about spring and pastels and flowers and bunnies. And that doesn't exactly cohere with, let's say, Mark chapter 16. And so you want to figure out how to invite people into a deeper experience of God and the resurrection, of this life from the dead and forgiveness of sins that is this one-time event of God's power breaking into history, which is not just the cycle of spring or flowers coming up one more time, and somehow find the way to use what people are thinking about in order to help them get there. And so that can be a little bit more challenging than some of the other Holy Week experiences where you have people that want to focus more specifically on the deep meaning of the day. Here, people want to have the day and the joy, but they might not be ready to go as deep or be as prepared for that, or have the attention span that the people, the congregation on some of these other days might have. I'll also say that if you preach strong resurrection sermons on Easter, or any strong sermons, be prepared to deal with the small crisis of faith that comes afterwards, as all the excitement and all the adrenaline from Holy Week wears off, as all the chocolate and coffee wears off, and that crash comes and the preacher's nap calls you. Don't take all the difficulties or all the wonderings too seriously. I find that when I've made strong statements of the resurrection, that's when I go home that afternoon and wonder if I really believe this. That's part of the work of preaching. And so let yourself be taken care of, and let your, keep saying your prayers and doing the next right thing. From Easter, I want to look at Christmas. Christmas also has a wide variety of people, family members, guests, visitors, adults, lots of children with all kinds of expectations, awe and wonder. But secular Christmas really does line up more with religious Christmas, even though we hear way too much about a war on Christmas. And that's because family, food, decorations, light, music, joy, those are all components of the incarnation. People want to sing Christmas carols. Well, the angels sang Christmas carols on Christmas. They didn't know they were Christmas carols yet, but after they sang them, they certainly became that. And so we can draw on all of that to help lead people to Jesus and the truths of the incarnation. Also on Christmas, it's worth taking the time to make the sermon beautiful. Include poetry, stories, illustrations, involve kids or animals if you have them, or other cool things. The incarnation is about that beauty, joy, and love. And so we want to exemplify that in how we're preaching as well as what we're preaching. And, people are going to get the message of Christmas. So don't worry about bringing the message in that way. Bring something beautiful to add to the event. Then finally, a word on Advent and Lent, which are two of the major seasons of the year. Most people these days in Advent and Lent are not where the church expects them to be, or where they might have been in the old days. People don't keep the same kind of fasts, don't give up the same things for Lent that they used to. They might go to fish fries on Friday nights, but those are generally bigger feasts these days with fried fish and French fries and everything else than they might normally eat. And Advent for people is very rarely silent and still. People are getting ready for church stuff and home stuff and school stuff and parties and all the other pieces that people need to do. And so we don't want to guilt people into, because they're not observing the seasons the way we think they should observe them. Most people, for instance, want to have more time and more quiet and more peace during Advent in the run up to Christmas. And it may not be their fault that they don't. And so what we want to do is help people where they are, meet them where they are, and invite them to take the next step. Yes, we can invite them to find a way to carve out a moment of quiet for themselves without guilting them into, because they haven't done it enough. We can invite them into ways to make Lent more meaningful by giving up things or taking on things or whatever Lenten disciplines we can recommend without guilting them or making it seem like if they haven't done this thing that they used to do when they were kids, they've somehow missed Lent or done it wrong. We don't want to scold people. We want to invite them into something deeper. And then finally, I would just say to you as preachers or any other kind of church work, you can't mess up Christmas or Easter or Holy Week or Advent or Lent. Jesus is going to do what Jesus is going to do. We're gifted with the opportunity to share the good news in special ways on those occasions, but it doesn't depend on us. And so let the Holy Spirit guide us, enjoy what Jesus is up to, and preach your heart out.